Hello there. Hello again. I'm Bernie Miklasz, and of course, this would be the Bernie Show, presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. Just a reminder, I need to just remind you, taking care of some business. At sportshubstl.com, I write 5 columns a week, although it'll only be 4 this week. And I do 5 videos each week, and I join the Randy Carricker Show every Friday morning. You can access all of that, including the podcast version of the Bernie Show videos at sportshubstl.com. In addition to that, I do a lot for KMOX, not only 11:20 a.m., but 104.1, I think it is, FM. You can catch me on the Gas House Gang, Redbird Rush Hour, Sports Open Line on KMOX. Proud to be affiliated with that St. Louis legendary institution. And I'm always happy to join Katie Wu of The Athletic once or twice a week on the Cardinal Territory video and podcast. You can also catch me, and I always leave this one out. I've been doing a podcast on the Cardinals with Will Leach for years now, and it's called Seeing Red. And we do it once a week, and you can find that wherever you get your podcasts. Okay. Now that I've got the preliminaries out of the way, let me tell you about today's topic. And I'm pretty fired up about this because I'm a weirdo and I like to do a lot of research. And my research paid off because I found some really interesting things today. And these are not trivial matters either. They have to do with a pretty serious topic, which is injuries and how, especially pitching injuries, and how that has impacted a lot of major league teams this season. And well, it's been going like this for years, but pitchers falling and cracking left and right all over the place. And the fact that the Cardinals actually are one of the better teams at having stability with the pitchers that they have in terms of like preventing or at least reducing the injury risk. And yeah, there is something to that. It's not all just dumb luck. So I want to get into that today and just start out by saying I'm recording this before I know anything that's happened with the first game of the Cardinals Royals day-night doubleheader at Busch Stadium. So I have no idea what's going on in the first game. It's been a crazy day. You don't want to hear my problems because I don't have any problems, but I've been spending a lot of time at the dentist's office, and we're getting some things taken care of. And today was one of those days. And frankly, it took longer than I thought. By the time I got home, I was kind of gassed. And so I got off to a late start as far as putting all this together. But I wanted to do all the research. So at least when I talked about this, I knew what I was talking about. And I could give you some numbers that I think I mean, there are a lot of pitching injuries, for example. But I'm going to give you some stuff where I think many of you, I don't know, are going to just say, wow, I didn't know that. Yeah, and you should be happy because the Cardinals are sort of staying above that. They're taking good care of their pitchers, and it's leading to a group of pitchers that are more stable in terms of their availability and their durability. So I'm going to get into all that. So follow along with me, please. And I appreciate your patience waiting for me on this day, especially the people at sportshubstl.com who I try to get these videos in early, and I feel bad when I don't because I know it maybe causes a little extra work and hassle for them. So I have great teammates that I appreciate very much at sportshubstl.com. Well, how about I get to the point, right? The 2025 Cardinals are experiencing incredibly good fortune in a critical area, avoiding injuries. With a healthy team, they don't have to rely on their depth pieces as much as most teams. In other words, I'm not saying the Cardinals have great depth because I don't think they do. They don't have good depth in terms of the position players and all that. They don't. But see, that's why it's even more important where you can play ball, where you don't have to rely and lean on that depth so much. When you're healthy, you don't run into all these emergencies where you're calling up dudes left and right and you're plugging in guys in the major leagues who probably aren't very good or aren't ready for the major leagues. And where the Cardinals shine the most in this area is in the pitching department at a time where there's so many major league teams that have been bitten hard or chewed up by injuries to their relievers, to their starters, you name it. Well, that has not been the case at all for the St. Louis Cardinals. And before I debated whether to do this or not because it's cranky, but before I provide the details about how the Cardinals have avoided injuries, let me say this, because this is one of my pet peeves. Okay, I am an adult, so I do not believe in jinxes. In fact, I think believing in jinxes is kind of silly. This is Easter Bunny tooth fairy stuff. The whole jinx thing has always amused me because smart people who know better that actually talk about, in other words, smart people who should know better is what I meant, actually talk about jinxes as if they're a real thing, like they're the boogeyman. No, they are not a real thing. Seriously, this is kindergarten level stuff. The idea that some podcaster or sports writer or play-by-play announcer will automatically doom a team or a pitcher because they simply mention how that team has stayed healthy, or they mention that a pitcher's got a no-hitter through 6 innings. You have people just going cuckoo, just saying, I can't believe you just jinxed the team. You just jinxed the pitcher. The immortal Vin Scully called a record 20 no-hitters, including a couple or 3 perfect games. One of those perfect games was Don Larson in the 1956 World Series. No broadcasters have ever come close to calling 20 no-hitters. And yet every time Vin Scully was doing his job in the Dodgers booth, radio or television or both, he would say, well, Don Drysdale's got a no-hitter through 6. And then Dodgers fans would go bananas. And if Don Drysdale or Sandy Koufax or Oral Hershiser or whomever had a no-hitter going in the 7th and he lost the no-hitter, these loons would actually blame Vin Scully for the fact that the pitcher lost the no-hitter. And I just don't, I really, really don't understand this stuff. It's just cuckoo. It's just absolutely cuckoo. And Scully explained it best. He once said, because I even asked him this one time because I was curious, and I asked him, well, do you hear from people when you're talking about how Kershaw's got a no-hitter through 6, and and then all of a sudden the no-hitter's gone? And this was, by that time emails were fine, but he used to get these really nasty handwritten notes and letters from Dodgers fans who are furious, who literally blamed him for a pitcher losing the no-hitter. I mean, is it possible to be any crazier than that? And Scully explained it this way. This is when he was more doing radio than TV, but it applies to both. He said, I'm not going to insult the audience by, in effect, declaring that they're they're so silly and superstitious that they really think that an announcer has anything to do with what happens on the field. He also pointed out how at that time baseball games were running longer and longer, and the great Vin Scully pointed it out, said, besides, I'm here to render a service. And what he meant by that was, he said, not everybody can stay glued to the radio or even, watch the TV set. People will leave a game and then they'll come back. Something will happen. They'll get a phone call. They'll have to answer the door, whatever it is. Maybe they're putting the kids to bed. Maybe they're driving home from work and, the signal's not good and they can't hear it. He says, it's up to me to provide the information so they know what's been going on so I can catch them up. And he said, so why would I withhold that service from people that have shown me the respect of listening to my broadcast? And, if you think about it, that's the perfect explanation. Broadcasters who play this jinx game are like immature imbeciles, if you ask me, because y'all don't have any impact on whether somebody pitches a no-hitter or not. So don't flatter yourselves. That's always been my attitude. Anyway, I had to get that off my chest, so I had to be cranky there for a while. Thank you for your tolerance. All right, now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's resume. Through June the 4th, which was Wednesday, Cardinals players combined had missed 113 games to injury, only 113. Now you think, well, isn't that a lot? No, it's not. It's hardly anything. I'll explain. I got all the numbers. But even that total of 113 games missed by their players is misleading because more than 70 of those missed games are attributed to pitcher Zach Thompson, the lefty who suffered a serious lat muscle strain in spring training. And he's nowhere close to pitching again, but he's on the 40-man roster. And listen, the reason why he counts is because he's not only on the 40-man roster, but he was in camp And he did have a chance to make the big club. He was in competition for a job before he injured the lat in March. So other than that, the only injury the Cardinals have sustained this season so far was when catcher DH Ivan Herrera missed 30 games with a deep bone bruise in his knee. There's been a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I mean, Nolan Gorman was on the 10-day IL. Jordan Walker's on it now. This is nothing compared to what's going on around the major leagues. Only one team, the Phillies, have fewer games missed by their players than the Cardinals this year, and it's pretty close. The Phillies players have missed only 10 fewer games than Cardinals players have missed this year. So it took me some time, and yeah, I'm bragging about how much work I put into this. So because I want to present stuff to you that you don't know. I just don't want to get on here and just run my mouth every day. I always like to have statistical stuff and informational stuff to just sort of bring a point home so you can understand the context of what I'm trying to say. So, but I do it because I want to do it. So I do hope you appreciate it, though. I went through every major league club starting actually this morning before I went to the dentist. And then when I got home to continue it some more. And by the way, after this, I'm taking a nap. I'm not writing a column because I had to take some meds and to go with some of this dental stuff that's going on. And they're making me a little woozy. So I'm going to get through this video and then shut it down. I bet you didn't want to hear all this, right? Anyway, through Wednesday, June the 4th, National League teams check. All right, here's the numbers that matter. Remember what I told you. The Cardinals players combined had missed 113 games so far this year. So through Wednesday, June 4th, National League teams had an average of 420 games missed by their players so far. The injury count is even higher in the American League. Teams have an average of 487 games missed by their players. The overall Major League average is 456 games missed by players per team. And this counts only, this is important, this counts only the injuries that put the player or the pitcher on the injured list. So once again, those averages I just gave you, let's me repeat the Major League average. Major League teams are averaging so far for the season an average of 487 games missed by players per team. That is a massive amount. And I'm not saying all of these guys are all-stars. They're not. That's why you have a lot of depth, and even your depth players get hurt. But for major league teams to be averaging 426 games missed to injury per team, and the Cardinals are what, 113? They've been very fortunate, very, very fortunate. And this is relevant. You know why? Because we've talked about it a lot. The Cardinals, starting today with that doubleheader against the Royals, the Cardinals have a ton of games between now and the All-Star break. A lot of games. It's a really heavy load. And so when you're playing so many games, so many injuries, and like today, you have a situation, there was an unscheduled doubleheader. They had to do it because of bad weather on Wednesday. This is when your team is really challenged in terms of depth. And the Cardinals are challenged in terms of depth because I said earlier, I do worry a bit about their starting pitching depth. I do think, and this is true of most bullpens, I do think their secondary relievers, kind of make you a little nervous. So my point is the Cardinals are going through this long slog of games. I don't think in terms of quality, their depth is all that great. So imagine what we would be thinking now, looking ahead over the next 6 weeks or so with all these games. If they didn't have most of the guys that they count on, really all of the guys that they count on in place and ready to go, where Cardinals don't have to reach way down in the minors. And they've done it a little bit, with all due respect to the dude they brought up when Jordan Walker went on the IL. The Cardinals, I know JC's down there, and I know some other players are down there, but let's face it, they're not loaded with major league ready talent right now. They're really not. And part of that reason is they've had injuries to some of their minor league prospects, pitchers. But I'm not here to talk about minor leaguers. I'm here to talk about the depth on the big club. So the Cardinals have been very fortunate to avoid these huge burdensome injury counts that most other teams are putting up with. Here's an example. Let me tell you about the most injury plagued teams in the National League so far. And I'm going to keep it to the National League because the Cardinals are competing with National League teams to make the playoffs, if in fact they're able to do it. So let me tell you about the most injury plagued teams in the National League. And I try to limit the rundown to, so-called contenders, borderline contenders, whatever. Like, the Washington Nationals have a huge injury games missed totals, but I didn't put them on here, but because I don't think realistically they have a chance to make the postseason. But anyway, the Dodgers have 800. I just laugh at this. When you should have saw me putting the notes together, writing all the names down. I'm like, is this ever going to end? What do they got? Like 90 players on the injured list so far this year? Anyway, the Dodgers, 874 games missed by players. Once again, we compare it to St. Louis. The Cardinals, 113 games missed by players. The Mets, 640 games missed by players combined. The Reds, who are not out of any kind of playoff picture, they're good enough to maybe get in it. But anyway, the Reds, 564 games missed. The Cardinals, 113. The Brewers, 541 games missed. Well, the Cardinals at 113, that looks pretty good. The Padres, 500 games missed. The Diamondbacks, 318 games missed. And I'm sitting here like a fool for all the work I did to look these things up. And I neglected to tell you about the the Chicago Cubs. Well, let me just read you the Cubs, right? One of the guys they signed to be big in the bullpen, Ryan Brazier, 57 games so far. A guy who was, they thought would be in the rotation, Javier Assad, 70 games and counting. Tyson Miller, bullpen guy, 70 games and counting. Justin Steele is out for the entire season after elbow surgery, but he's missed 58 games and counting. Shota Imanaga has been out for 31 games because of a hamstring injury. He's still out. They also have two other relievers that have missed games, but I forgot to tally up the Cubs total, and I apologize for that, but it's a lot. In fact, I found that part. The Cubs they're close to 350 games missed by their players. Again, the Cardinals, 113. So if you're concerned, if you look at it this way, the four rivals in the NL Central have an average of 482 games missed by their players through June the 4th. That's 369 games more than what Cardinals players have missed. That average is 369 games more than what the St. Louis Cardinals players have missed in terms of games lost to injury. That is a huge difference, is it not? So if you're concerned about the Cardinals' depth this season, and again, I've expressed my concern in this video and in other ways, other forms, but here's the good news. It hasn't been a factor because the injury impact of the Cardinal has been minimal. They haven't had to deal with large numbers of injuries where you're like, well, what are we going to do? I don't even know if we have any pitching, that kind of thing. They haven't had to deal with the kind of emergencies or mini crises that have caused their competitors to have to scramble around like crazy to fill a bunch of voids on the 26-man roster. And I really think that's one of the reasons why the Cardinals are in this thing, at least, if you're looking at the wild card standings. I didn't even talk about how many games they trail the Cubs. You know why? Because these teams are going to be playing 7 games starting June 23rd and then up through July the 6th or 7th. So what's the point of that's just like the trade deadline stuff. Why has everyone got to give an answer today when there's so much baseball still to be played before you get to the point where these things matter? Because people say, well, you think they're going to catch the Cubs burning? Well, first of all, I don't. But the other thing is I don't need to answer that now. These teams are going to play 4 in St. Louis and then 3 in Chicago between June the 23rd through July the 6th or 7th. By then we'll know whether the Cardinals have a prayer of staying with the Cubs, okay? But still, at least the Cardinals have not lost anyone. They may not have as good of overall talent as some teams, but when their talent is intact, that's better than if you have a good team, but you have a good team that's losing players and pitchers all over the place. It's always an advantage if you have a respectable talent base, if you have a good talent base, a solid talent base. It is an advantage to have your 26-man roster in good shape and unbroken because of injuries. And I'd say again, not to be redundant, and I apologize, but like I said, the meds are kicking in. Whew. I'd have to say the low injury count is an important factor in the Cardinals' status as a National League wildcard contender, which is how I see them right now. I don't think this team would be able to keep up if the injury suddenly became a debilitating issue. The Cardinals have a payroll that's somewhere between 135, closer to 140 million. I don't know that that payroll could absorb the cost of losing key players to injuries, where you have a blitz of injuries, right? See, it's the teams that have all the money in the world, it's not as big of a deal. The Dodgers have a $339 million payroll. The Mets have a $328 million payroll. Combined, if you look at those teams, and here's a great number, the Mets and the Dodgers combined for this season, their players put together have lost roughly 1,500 games missed because of injuries. Those two teams, 1,500 combined games by their players missed because of injuries. But you remember what they were doing, mostly the Dodgers were doing last offseason. They were signing everybody they could just to make sure they had a lot of depth. And that's why, it's nice to be – all major league owners have money to spend. There's no one applying for, government assistance, all right? Well, then again, maybe the antitrust clause is that. Anyway, I digress. But when you're a huge, massive revenue team and you have more money to spend than others, that's one way where you can make sure you have a lot of depth. The Cardinals could be spending more, and I think they will going forward, but they're not this year. We'll see what the trade deadline brings. And when I get into the next segment, I want to talk about something that I think is even more important, because it's the startling amount of pitching injuries in Major League Baseball. It's not a new topic, but I've got some numbers to put on top of that topic. It's good information to share with you. But first, some words about DraftKings and the daily Pick 6 game. DraftKings covers a wide variety of sports, and this is a baseball town. If you're watching this video, chances are good. I think you like baseball, and you probably think Major League Baseball better than some other sports. So, hey, I like that. I feel the same way. It's time to put your knowledge to use and win big cash prizes through DraftKings daily Pick 6 contest. In DraftKings Pick 6, you just focus on player stats. You select anywhere from 2 to 6 players. They don't have to all play for the same major league team. You just look at all the lines set for players all around the majors, and you look at some statistical categories, and DraftKings sets kind of a higher or lower line on each one of those players. So you choose whether the individual player, depending on what category we're talking about, like home runs in a game, 0.5. Well, if you think Bryce Harper's going to hit a home run in his next game, you look it up, you click on his player card, it gives you some information. Well, if you select the higher and he hits a home run, then you win. If you say, no, I don't think so, they're going against a left-hander tonight. Well, if he doesn't hit a home run and you selected the lower, well, you win that way. So I'm just trying to explain how it works. And it really is that simple. And it's a lot of fun. So here's an invitation to get into the game. Take your shot at winning that money. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. You'll enjoy tracking your selected players while the games are in progress. But the most entertaining part of all, of course, is winning, cashing in. It's easy to get started. Just download the DraftKings app and open an account, then choose a sport, pick your players, and go for it. New players at DraftKings get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly with just a $5 entry. So download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now. Use the code, really important, STL Sports. That's the code, STL Sports, for new customers, where you can play $5 but get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts. Bigger wins only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. And of course, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, let's resume. Going into Thursday, the Cardinals had only one pitcher, Zach Thompson, on the injured list. Again, I'm not talking about minor league guys that have had surgery. And by the way, I know, some of those minor league pitchers could have been on the radar to help out later this year. So, yeah, I mean, we can't rule out the possibility that they may have provided some assistance. But I don't want to get all tangled up in those weeds. Let's just keep it to the major leagues right now. I'm talking about the majors. And let's face it, and if healthy, Zach Thompson probably would have been in the mix for 2025, but in what way? A relief role hasn't suited him, even though his performance has been pretty good. But it's, the up and down and pitching multiple times a week, it just, he didn't handle his arm, his body didn't handle that well. So I assume he would have been prepared as a starter, and maybe he would be in Memphis, and maybe he would be a good depth piece. But that's all null and void, because we will never know for sure if he would have had any value at all to the big club this year. I can't assume that he wouldn't have, but I also cannot assume that he would have had a valuable role. That's the point. When somebody gets hurt, you don't know, but you can't assume that the guy would be great. But I looked around every National League injury list when I'm thinking, gosh, all they've really had to do without was Zach Thompson in terms of their pitching staff. And the loss of pitchers around the National League is just staggering. All right, here's some numbers. 17 Dodgers pitchers have missed over 860 games this season, or over 850 games this season, to injuries. Through Wednesday. Their names include Clayton Kershaw, Ian Snell, Tyler Glasnow, Roki Sasaki, the guy they gave all that money to from Japan, Michael Grove, Gavin Stone, Tony Gonsolin. Now, Kershaw and Gonsolin are back, but the Dodgers basically still have an entire starting rotation on the injured list. And I didn't even mention the long list of important LA relievers that were knocked out by injuries, including Evan Phillips, Brusdar Graterol, and I always mispronounce his name. Apologies. Michael Kopech, Blake Trinan. I mean, really, really good relievers. Then you look within the division. 10 Milwaukee Brewers pitchers have missed a combined 492 games so far, including Aaron Savali, Brandon Woodruff, Nestor Cortez, Jose Quintana, DL Hall, Tobias Myers, Aaron Ashby, and Robert Gasser. That's an entire six-man rotation right there, and then some. But at least the Brewers are getting these guys back. Savali just returned. Myers just returned. Hall just returned. Quintana just returned. And Brandon Woodruff, who's been out since late 2023 after undergoing shoulder surgery, he's been looking good in the minors. He had a setback, but not because of the shoulder. He got struck on the elbow by a batted ball in what was going to be his final minor league rehab start. So he'll be in their rotation soon. I can't tell you exactly when, because I don't know what the report is on him getting dinged on the elbow. But he was ready to go until that. As we mentioned earlier, the Cubs lost starter Justin Steele to a season-ending elbow surgery. He's their number one starter. Shota Imanaga, who was the Rookie of the Year in the National League last year, he's still out with a hamstring. Hasn't pitched since May 4th. Isn't on any kind of rehab start schedule yet. Maybe in early July or maybe really late this month. Cardinals might see him up there at Wrigley Field, but he's been out a long time. Javier Saad, who was listed as the most likely guy to pin down the fifth starter spot, he hasn't been healthy all season, and the Chicago bullpen has been rocked by injuries as well. The Reds have a lot of talent, and the Reds have a lot of good things going on, but their pitchers, 9 of their pitchers have missed a combined 372 games so far. 8 Padres have missed a combined 440 games. I'm talking about pitchers. 8 San Diego pitchers have missed a combined 440 games, including Yu Darvish, Michael King, and Joe Musgrove. Pittsburgh's not a contender, But it's a shame to see their excellent young starter, Jared Jones, go out with an elbow injury. The Marlins are probably not a contender, but they've lost 3 starters already, including, that young kid they had, and they were bringing him along carefully, Yuri Perez. I think he had Tommy John. Not going to see him this year. The Mets have missed several starting pitchers, including Frankie Montas, Sean Manaea, and Paul Blackburn. The Phillies right now, even though they haven't been hit hard by injuries, they don't have Aaron Nola, or they don't have Ranger Suarez. Those guys should be back fairly soon, though. The Diamondbacks have gotten walloped. You say, well, what's wrong with them? They were supposed to be really good. Why do they have a losing record? It's because their pitchers keep going out. Their pitchers they just keep losing pitchers. The Diamondbacks, this was one of those things. Corbin Burns, who they gave, unbelievably lavish contract. Corbin Burns started feeling it a little bit in spring training, and he left his start, a really abbreviated start the other night, because he was feeling elbow tingles and all this stuff. And so he's on the IL. Who knows where that's going to go? Jordan Montgomery, gone for the season, elbow. Eduardo Rodriguez, he's gone again with an injury, and they don't have their closer, Kendall Graveman, because of an injury. And there's a couple other bullpen guys that are out. Atlanta has gone a big chunk of the season without starting pitchers Spencer Strider and Ronaldo Lopez. And in fact, Lopez still isn't back. And plus, they have a pretty valuable reliever in Joe Jimenez. He's out. Big name starting pitchers. I did want to just touch on the American League briefly. They're missing all around the American League, including Garrett Cole, the Yankees, Pablo Lopez of the Twins, Cleveland, Shane Bieber, Kansas City's Cole Reagans, Baltimore's Grayson Rodriguez. The Mariners have been hanging in there in the AL West race despite losing 3 starting pitchers, George Kirby, Bryce Miller, and Logan Gilbert. So when you hear all of that carnage, right, and that's why I wanted to read it all to you. When you go team by team and see all these teams that have been rocked by pitching injuries, a lot of big names crossed off the list. It's pretty remarkable to think that the worst thing that has happened to the Cardinals on their pitching supply this year is not having Zach Thompson. And remember, there's no jinxes. Pitchers get hurt. They don't need a guy talking into a video camera to make them lose like their elbow snaps because I'm saying that. All right, I'll stop that. I went on a long rant about that earlier. Anyway, I am convinced of this, and I've talked to Oli Marmol about it. And I'm convinced of this. I think Marmol and Dusty Blake, the pitching coach, have done a really good job about being proactive in doing what they can do, what they can reasonably do to lower the injury risk to their pitchers. And so I don't know if any of the Marmol haters will say, well, there you go again with your gratuitous praise of Oli Marmol. Okay, whatever. You don't like him? Just tell me you don't like him. Let's not pretend it's about baseball, though, okay? And yeah, I think their approach this year has paid off to this point. I think it'll be tested during the next month to 6 weeks with all of these games. I think I think it's a hazardous time, but let's see if the fact that they've taken some precautions in advance to make sure their pitchers would be healthy and fresh, whether that will help them get through this next busy phase of schedule. So what have they done? All right. The Cardinals have used a 6-man rotation to give their starters extra rest, and they will do so again this month. And that's why one of the reasons why their 5-man rotation is intact. And they have 2 guys they can use as a 6th starter, Steven Matz or rookie Michael McGreevy. Marmol and Blake have also gotten the most out of the rotation in 2 ways. And I'll explain this because I think this is pretty good. They get a good supply of innings out of their starters, but they're also limiting the number of pitches. They're limiting the number of pitches per start. Part of this is because they have the kind of staff where you can be efficient. I'll explain that here in a minute. But going into Thursday, the Cardinals were tied for 4th in the majors with an average of 5.5 starts per inning. 5.5 innings per start. Now, before you all start growling and, you think it's not, you want it to be 1968 again, whatever. I'd like to see that too, because it means I'd be a lot younger than I am. Anyway, That average of 5.5 innings per start, there's only 3 teams in the majors that are getting more innings out of their starters on a per start basis. So, this, in other words, you don't have to like modern baseball, but in the context of modern baseball, the Cardinals are getting more innings out of their pitchers than all but 3 teams. But here's the deal. Their starters average 85 pitches per start, which is the 11th lowest average by a big league rotation. So they're getting the 4th highest innings per start total, but they have one of the lowest almost bottom third in terms of pitches thrown per start. So the amount of strain being put on these starters is minimal, and part of that is by design. The Cardinals are tied for 5th in the majors this season with 18 starts under 80 pitches. And it's not just because they're all bad starts. We've seen them pull some guys when it looked like they could have gone a little longer. But Marmol and Blake are taking the safer route if they have a choice, if they still feel good about the game, that they can still win the game, or the game is there to be ready to turn it over in the bullpen. So the Cardinals have 18 starts this season where their starter worked under 80 pitches. And the Cardinals are tied for having the 5th lowest number of starts that last between 80 and 99 pitches. And the starters have gone from 100 to 109 pitches in a game 6 times. 6 times, which is the 12th lowest number in the majors. So they're not pushing these guys. They're not pushing. See, that's how pitchers get hurt. Not the only reason, but that's one of the factors. And see, this is also one positive about having a starting staff that doesn't have substantial strikeout power, because number one, those are the guys that pitch with a lot of strain, not all of them, but a lot of them, where, you're throwing 98 all the time. Something's going to snap, or you're going to get gassed and your stuff's going to become hittable. I think I actually respect the Cardinals for sort of understanding you can do it the old school way. They have the 8th highest ground ball rate in the majors, their starting pitchers, and their starters also have the 3rd lowest walk rate. So let's think about that. Got one of the highest ground ball rates in the majors as a group of starters, and they have the 3rd lowest walk rate as a group of starters. So that combination, lots of ground balls, but few walks, get them to hit it on the ground, get them to hit some hard, because they limit home runs too. Get it to, except for Palante. When you say, well, we got a great defense, we don't mind ground balls. Let's get those ground balls. Let's not walk people. Let's keep the ball in the yard, and let's have an efficient staff. And that's exactly what they have. They're getting the best of both worlds. They have the 4th best average of innings per start and one of the lowest averages of pitches per start. So the stress on the St. Louis starters is about as low as you can get it. Now, that doesn't mean they're all going to stay healthy. Again, pitchers are made to be broken. That's just the way it is these days. But that's why I respect and admire the way Marmol and Blake have set this up. See, they're keeping all of that in mind. They also know they don't have a lot of depth down below. So they have to have an efficient starting rotation. They have to, get their 5.5 innings out of these guys. They got, the ones that throw the ground balls. Get those ground balls, put the defense to work, don't walk people, and let's get back in the dugout feeling good, feeling fresh, right? And that's one way to compensate for the fact that, other than Gray and Liberatore, you don't really have any strikeout guys in your rotation. Well, what about the Redbird relievers? Once again, I like this stat. Marmol and Blake have used their relievers on consecutive days, meaning 0 days rest. You pitch on a Tuesday and then you're back on a Wednesday. That's 0 days rest. They've done that only 33 times this season, and that's tied for the 11th or the 12th fewest times for an MLB bullpen to use relievers on zero days rest. So I do think that Marmol and Blake probably could have been more cautious with Kyle Leahy, because he seems like he's out of gas, at least for now. They might want to back off with him. His strikeout rate is cratering. But I never said that these guys have made all the right calls. You're going to be doing things that are going to kind of backfire on you. But that's just one example. These guys, meaning the manager and the pitching coach, have done a hell of a job of minimizing risk. And in this day and age where you have pitchers just getting busted up physically all over the place, I think that's pretty damn smart. What would I call this system? I don't know. Protect and preserve your pitchers, I guess. It can only help the Cardinals navigate their way through a heavy load of games over the next 6 weeks. And the Cardinals so far have been largely unscathed by injuries to their pitchers. And we'll see if it stays that way. But to even get it to this point has been really nice success. And it's a big factor in their success. And all of this puts them in good shape compared to most major league teams that are constantly scrambling and rushing around and trying to cover for their injured hurlers. It's another example of smart managing by Oli Marmol, but as I like to say many, many times, it's a 162 game season, and we will see what transpires from here on out. But I like the way they set it up. That's my only point for today. And that and the fact that the Cardinals, relative to the major league averages for injuries, they're way ahead of the game. They have been largely unscathed. Thank you for watching. Thanks for putting up with me. I appreciate you all for supporting my work, and make sure to leave comments. I read them. I don't interfere with your stream of thoughts by responding to comments because it's like, you know what? Let people say what they want. But I do read them and I appreciate them. Please leave your comments. And thanks to DraftKings for supporting the Bernie Show. And we'll be back tomorrow, and I'll get a column done tomorrow and also have another video for you here on sportshubstl.com. Thank you very much.